And welcome to episode 298 of the 77 Club. Harry, start with the socials.
The Wolves 77 Club on Facebook and Instagram, at 77 Club Podcast on Spotify and YouTube. I nearly forgot. Cheers, hello.
Cheers, hello. Jack Williams is here.
Hello, everybody.
And Dan Bayliss.
Hello.
Harry, Wolves came from behind to beat Ipswich 2-1 thanks to goals from Pablo Sarabia and Jürgen Strand Larsen. We were talking last week that it was essentially finished, over and done with in terms of who was going to be relegated from the Premier League, who was going to be safe. We thought Wolves would be safe, but we just had to make sure. It was a proper 6-pointer, this one. Could have gone to 6 points if Ipswich had won, but it did go to 12 with the Wolves win.
Yeah, and I was playing it down a bit last week, saying I ain't bothered. I don't care if Ipswich beat Bournemouth, it's done. But when Ipswich went 1-0 up, I started shitting my pants. I'm thinking, oh no, we're going to crumble. They're going to catch us. But as we know, second half, we absolutely battered them. And I think that second half just showed how poor Ipswich actually are. We played well, don't get me wrong, absolutely dominated them. But for them to fall away like that and make it particularly quite easy for us, really. They just sat back and we completely dominated from their goal onwards. But yeah, amazing resilience from the team, amazing comeback, something we would never have done under Gary O'Neill after going 1-0 down in such a big game. We'd just crumbled. So amazing game, and I'm jealous of Jack and Bayliss because obviously they were there. I'd love to have been in the away end. It looked good when we scored the goals, particularly in that lower tier, when they all ran over, and Andre obviously ran over, grabbing the phone and that. But yeah, a win's a win, and Vítor's done a fantastic job, and it was just the icing on the cake in these last 4 games.
Bayliss, it was obviously, as Jack said, the first time that you'd both been to Portman Road. What was it like as an experience? Because it is what you call, I suppose, a legacy ground, a vintage ground.
Yeah, proper old school little ground. I quite liked it. It was tight and cramped, and there were more police than I've ever seen in my life in an away end. It was good. There was like nice little pubs that we could drink in, and they weren't too fussed about away fans. The only thing I didn't like was that the actual away pub that was right next to the station in Ipswich had upped their prices to £7.50 for the flattest beer I'd ever had. So we had one in there, and we went, out we go.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nice and friendly, decent fans, all right place. Haven't got much bad to say about it, especially as we
doing tractors.
No, but we're only in the town centre. But I agree about the beer. It's also the fact that it was like you're paying £7.50 for beer in a plastic glass. So we had to walk up into the town, and the next place was the same sort of thing, wasn't it? We had another beer in a plastic glass. So we just kept on walking as far away as we could from the ground until somewhere gave us an actual proper pint, and then just stayed there, even though technically it was all home fans only. But I agree with Bayliss. It is the most police I've ever seen in the way end. But they were everywhere. There was some right next to us. There was some all in the concourse at half time was full of police, even though I think the reality of there being much trouble was pretty low, really. So that was a strange thing. But yeah, I'd never been to Ipswich before, as I said last week. And yeah, old school ground. The only bad thing is if the ball goes up in the air from where we were sat, you couldn't see it go up in the air because the low hanging roofs, particularly for the people. We weren't right at the back. We were near enough the back for that. But you know, I was a little bit worried, obviously, as you are when we go 1-0 down. And I think the thing that surprised me is I was listening to an Ipswich podcast in preparation for the game. And the thing that made me doubt myself a little bit, because I was sort of thinking, like, even though they beat Bournemouth, I think even if we'd lost on Saturday, I think they'd still be absolutely doomed. But they seem to think that if they did win, that they would be able to get back into it, even despite the fact they've not won back-to-back games all season. So them kind of having more confidence than I thought they would made me start to doubt myself a little bit. But I think, overall, really, yeah, we were poor first half, but the class absolutely showed through second half, didn't it? Particularly with the midfield and some aspects of the play. And if I was an Ipswich fan, particularly after going 1-0 up, the thing I'd be really, really disappointed in is the fact that on paper they had to win that game. That was a must-win if they were going to stay up. And when we got it back to 1-1, there was just nothing. There was just no response from them at all. It was like they were beat and they didn't.
They looked as bad after going 1-0 to equalising to losing.
Second half, there was just no fight there, and that's the sign of a team that is ultimately going to get relegated. One who just can't deal with any sort of setback, which is what we were like under O'Neill, really, and that's why we've turned a corner and they haven't.
Harry, Pablo Sarabia came on and made a huge difference. Obviously, scoring the equaliser, getting the assist as well. I think you did a video on your YouTube channel this week about him potentially leaving on a free transfer next season. How much of a big part has he played in Wolves' survival race this season?
Well, it's weird because he pops up once in a blue moon and does something amazing, doesn't he? Under O'Neill, it was that Spurs game, the volley and setting up Lamina. Under O'Neill this season, before he got the sack, he was in and out. Under Vítor, he's come on quite a lot, hasn't he? He always brings him on a substitute, started the odd game, but this is the biggest impact he's had, isn't it, under Vítor? To come on, he was the key we needed to unlock their door. And yeah, great goal. Really good goal. But I thought Strand Larsen brought the ball down really well to set him up as well in the build-up. And then a fantastic cross for the winner as well. Yeah, brilliant. But we know how much money he's on. We know he's going. I think John Percy did an article, didn't he, the other day? He's going, Semedo's going, which is a shame because I'd probably out the two would rather keep Semedo because he's our captain. He's been brilliant. But obviously, they don't offer him a new deal. And we can't skip over it. Obviously, we're talking about the second half at the moment. We've got to talk about, I want to get Jack and Bayliss' perspective of it. That absolutely mental free kick. Well, what is it? Inside the 6-yard box, handball, calamity, and then Agbadou hits it low. And Bayliss obviously filmed it on his phone, so we saw it from his angle. But yeah, Sarabia, a good moment. He was the match winner, really, him and Strand Larsen, along with some others. But he won't be here next season. He won't be here next season.
Dan, I think we want to hear about what you thought of the free kick. I mean, a lot of people are saying actually it doesn't give the attacking side any sort of positive thing to get a free kick that far out with everybody on the line. It's essentially a handball. I mean, should the keeper be almost treated as an outfield player in that regard?
Because it's not a handball. It's pass back, isn't it? It's a pass back.
You like to handball it, pass it back.
It's been the same rules. It's been the same rules for a long time. So I see no issue. The thing I had issue with is it was clear that they're all going to rush you. Why pass sideways? Why not knock it backwards? They will dive towards the ball, and then you've got a better shot. So I think Wolves need to be a bit cuter with the way they dealt with it. But that said, how often do you see one of these in proper football? Like, that's the first time I've ever seen it.
It's rare, isn't it? Jack, do you think he should have just... You're on mute. You should just welly it. Just absolutely welly it and hope for any sort of touch. You've got 11 players on the line.
I think that's, because it's also weird one that Agbadou was the person who was lined up to eventually hit it. I thought that was strange. I agree. I don't think it is much of an advantage because all that happens is as soon as the whistle goes, those players close the ball down immediately. And unless you make some space, then you've still got to hit it and put it either right in the roof of the net, which is difficult to do, or get a deflection that obviously ricochets off a player or two players and goes in. So I don't think it's a massive advantage, but at the same time, it is the rules. And the thing that surprised me is so many people in the ground, particularly people around us, didn't know. They thought they kept saying, send him off. I'm like, well, it's not. It's an indirect free kick and it's going to be a weird one. But I think you're asking, I think in those situations, if a team gets a penalty, for example, they're more likely to score than miss. In that situation, you're more likely to miss than score, I think, no matter who you are, because every player is there and they just close the ball and every player down. And as soon as they're out that 6-yard box, there's no time at all to actually move the ball and do something with it. So, yeah, I think you're unlikely to score from there, in my opinion.
What do you think of that, Harry?
I had a weird... This is so random. It's made me think about this. When I was about 15... my Sunday league team, we played in like a 5-a-side tournament, and I had a very similar situation while I was playing in this 7. I think it was 7-a-side, and I didn't know the rules. So it was exactly the same situation, but in a 7-a-side game. So they're all like there trying to block it. I hit it to shoot, not knowing the rules, but it hit the bottom of this lad's ass and flung into the top corner, and it got given because, like you say, Sam, you can hit it off one of their players if it's indirect. And I was just like, they're all going mad. And it's indirect. The ref was like, nah, it took a deflection. I still didn't have a clue what was going on. It just made me think of that. But
you like a genius.
But it was a complete accident. But yeah, that's what made. So when it was happening, I was thinking that. But I agree. 1, go backwards, don't go sideways. And 2, just try and hit it high. Like Agbadou tried to side foot it low. But it's easier said than done, isn't it, with Maul on the line and rushing you. And I'd give it like Strand Larsen to hit. I don't know why Agbadou hit. Just roll it back, let Strand Larsen try and wally it high.
They wouldn't have thought that Strand Larsen would have hit it, potentially.
They wouldn't have put Agbadou. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. As in, they would have thought Strand Larsen would have, but
I suppose it's not really something you plan for, is it? Or
no,
train for, or practice,
you can plan for,
or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, it's the penalties you can sort of understand, and I don't think they practice them too much. So for something like that to happen, as you say, Dan, doesn't really happen on many an occasion. Bayliss, how good is João Gomez, and how good is his midfield partner Andre?
Yeah, I know that the press have sort of given João Gomez most of the plaudits, but I thought Andre was unbelievable. He was absolutely everywhere. The amount of times he won the ball back, I honestly lost count. Mad. He's a class above. And Gomez, the way you wanted to break out the midfield and create space was absolutely fantastic. So we're talking about building teams and where we go next year. I've kept an eye on the comments, and the people we need to build a team around are João Gomez and Andre, because that's how you go and beat a side, by controlling the midfield, winning balls, being all over them. It was almost Kante-esque the way Andre did it.
They're incredible players, aren't they, Jack? And we were talking, I think, probably a couple of weeks ago, that we should be building a team around João Gomez. But Andre is obviously, couldn't even get a look in. I think you made the point in the group that couldn't get a look in under Gary O'Neill. And, he is just a champagne midfielder, a Moutinho-esque standard of player.
I mean, that just says pretty much all you need to know about Gary O'Neill, doesn't it, really? A lot of that, considering that he couldn't really get much of a look in. But yeah, they've been superb, and that was the difference, really. I think, particularly in that second half, is just that our midfield was too much for Ipswich to handle with. I think they'd probably got in at half time. Obviously, Vítor wasn't on the touchline, was he? So they hadn't heard him all game. He'd have been absolutely fuming, absolutely rollicked them, sent them straight out on the way. So they're out on the pitch early, and then they deliver with a performance like that. And the Ipswich fans were saying, it was the midfield that ultimately went on to win that game for us in the end, and I completely agree. So yeah, I'd love them. I think at the moment that partnership is more valuable than the likes of the other big name Brazilian in our team, and they're the two we want to keep. But realistically, how long are we going to keep a Brazilian, actually, international midfield partnership going? That's the only doubt in my mind, but we'll see how it goes. And it's been great to watch.
Harry, from one Andre on the pitch to the Andre on the sidelines, wasn't obviously, as Jack just mentioned there, the easiest of games for Andre Montero. Obviously, Vítor would have been, as Jack said, unloading the barrels, I think, at half time and saying what he wanted to do and stuff. But getting through it was the most important thing. And under unusual circumstances, given where Ipswich were in the table and the fact that the main man who's been pulling the strings and getting the results wasn't there.
Yeah, I forgot. And then I saw a picture of him sat up in the stands. And does it make too honestly, we don't know. We're not Premier League footballers. I don't know if it make too much difference. So I think I referred to it on the last podcast where Sam Allardyce used to choose to sit up in the stands first half and have an earpiece in, and obviously now it's classed as a punishment. But they did the job. Like Jack said, he probably did put a rocket up their ass at half time, and it was very noticeable. And just while we're on the Vítor subject, he made a great subs, and he got asked about Manetzi, didn't he? Because Manetzi didn't particularly do much in the game, like on the ball. But there's a clip going around of him, isn't there, of him running in like the 90th minute, non-stop pressing, running his bollocks off. And Vítor Pereira and Strand Larsen had said that Manetzi is a big reason why he's scored 4 goals in 3. And I think that's worth mentioning, because he took Bellegarde off for Sarabia, didn't he, and kept Manetzi on. And a lot of people were moaning about that I saw. But that was a great move. It was the right move to make. And obviously Rodrigo Gomez as well, when he came on, very energetic, put a great ball in. Strand Larsen probably should have scored it, a header. And yeah, again, Vítor, how many times are we going to say? It's just so nice to have a manager that just goes to basics and knows how to tactically change the game. And we reacted and we got the win. And I'm just really happy for everyone. I'm really happy for Strand Larsen, the celebrations. And while we're talking about Andre, that bloody selfie with that was it Nick Wright? He grabbed his phone and filmed it. What a moment. And obviously, it was on Match of the Day. And did you try and give him your phone, Jack? Do you have your phone out up in the top there?
Well, it's about three rows from the back. But it was weird because it's a weird away end because the majority of it is the upper tier, and then it's just a tiny little section down the front which is just Wolves fans. And we didn't really know what was going on. It seemed like it kicked off in there a few times, but whether that was just because of the celebrations or what. But that little pocket, it's only God, it's probably only like a few hundred seats, really, if that down there. But they seem to get most of the action, the entertainment, because it was just it was all kicking off the old game by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Tottenham at home. Harry, there is a debate that is ongoing, and Matheus Cunha will be available for this game. Wolves are unbeaten during Cunha's suspension, 3 wins and a draw. Wolves with Cunha under Pereira, 1.3 points per game. Without him, 2 points per game. Alan Shearer was on Match of the Day saying Wolves have looked a better team without him. Do you think he goes back into the starting 11, or are you sticking with what you said on previous weeks? You don't want to see him in a Wolves shirt again.
I'm just going to answer calmly because I did get a bit annoyed last week talking about Cunha. He does blow my piss a bit. But I've got to reiterate, he's been amazing. Again, I think he's the most talented player we've ever had, in my opinion. I think he's more talented than Jota, I do. And I think he'll go on to do amazing things. But he should not start. If he starts this game, I'll be absolutely devastated. I think it'd be a real bad decision from Vítor to start him. To drop either Managerial or Bellegarde, they're the two that it'll probably be if he is to come in, one of those two. It'll just upset the apple cart. Like the scenes at full time, everyone looked happy. The fans are happy with everything that's going on. I know we haven't played amazing teams in these last 4 games without him, but 3 wins and a draw, it's just really good form, and he should be on the bench. I used an analogy on a video I did about it. I said, if you're trying to discipline your kid, or say to your kid, you get a good report at school, I'll give you all the ice cream you want. But if he does a bad report and you're still giving the ice cream, he's not going to respect you, is he? He's going to do what he wants then. Same with Cunha. Misbehaves, bad disciplinary record, does that stupid interview with The Guardian. If you just throw him back in as soon as he's back and say he did stay next season, not that he will, but say he did, he just won't respect Vítor. I think he can do what he wants and never get dropped, even if he plays bad or misbehaves. So it'll send out the wrong message completely to start him in this game. So I'd put him on the bench, then bring him on in the second half if we need him.
Bailiff, are you in that camp? I know you were sort of on the other side of the fence saying that, he's a world-class talent. You've got to play him. We need to make the most of him whilst he's here. But who drops out? Is it Managerial? Is it Bellegarde? Is it somebody else?
No, I think he sits on the bench, unfortunately. I know he's a world-class talent, but you don't change something that's going that well at the moment. And Tottenham, the way they wobble, actually bringing him on in the second half to let him have a run at them might not be a bad thing.
Jack, is the system working now because he's missing or in spite of it?
I'd like to say in spite of it, I think. I mean, he is still obviously a great player who can offer us this sort of thing, but I think it's put a bit more pressure on the other players to be able to maybe have a little bit more individuality and not just be the Cunha show. And they've stepped up and they've delivered really well. So I totally agree with what everyone said so far. And everyone seems to be saying, I don't think he should start. However, I think he might. I think he might come straight back in, and I don't agree with it. But I've just got a feeling that it could be one of these things, particularly when the other players have given a lot, and a bit of rotation won't necessarily hurt us. But in my opinion, I think we should start exactly the same team that we started against Ipswich. And I know it was crap first half, but the response we got was brilliant, and there seems to be a bit of a bond and connection coming through. And ultimately, now we're looking at it. We have 7 games left this season, and we need to just. I know it's not mathematically certain yet, but it is, isn't it? Because pretty much, Ipswich aren't going to go and win 6 of their 7 games like they'd need to if we just win one more. So it is done, and we need to just start thinking about what we want to do for next season and who we want to give more minutes to. I'd like to see the likes of Rodrigo Gomez get a few more minutes because I think he impressed really well. These sort of things. So I think there is rotation to be done, but rotation with players that you definitely think are going to be here next season because it's more beneficial then. Cunha, with his attitude lately and the things he's been saying, he's mentally already at Man United or Arsenal or wherever it might be. So, it's just a waste. But I'd definitely, keep him around on the bench because he could make an impact from there. But, it's going to be an interesting one. And it's annoying after getting 10 points from 4 games, albeit against relegation fodder. But relegation fodder is who you have to beat if you stay up. That's how it goes, and that's what we've done. Yeah. We performed really well against it. But that's going to be what everyone's talking about. Become 1 o'clock on Sunday, So it's all going to be about whether Cunha starts or doesn't start. If he ever doesn't make the squad, God, there'll be rumours all over TalkSport and the internet about where he's going to and all this and who's going to have him in the summer. So, it's a position we didn't need to be in, but hopefully he's just sat there and reflected a little bit and learned that it isn't all about him, because they've got 10 points from these 4 games without him. And that's dreamland. It's dreamland.
And it's strange for Wolves. I mean, Harry, we're not historically brilliant against promoted teams. It's usually against the so-called better sides that we collect our points through the seasons. Certainly under the Nuno years, that was the case. Would you be on the same side as Jack there, saying that you're not going to make any changes, another unchanged team for Spurs?
I think that's the right thing to do, and I think that's what he will do. But on him mentioning Rodrigo Gomez, it gets to the point, like we've titled the podcast, haven't we, about not wanting to be on the beach, having the on the beach mentality. And when you look towards next season, like Semedo's not going to be here, Ait-Nouri might not be here, obviously Sarabia won't be, and there's a few others, maybe Sarr, but obviously normal Johnston. So but what I'm trying to get at is, do you switch it up a bit to try and keep it fresh and trying to keep the hungry players in there, so we don't do what we've done so many times before in the last few seasons, is just fall off when we know we're safe. We did it under Lopetegui. We did it under Bruno Lage that one season when we dropped down to like 10th after pushing for top 6. Obviously did it under O'Neill last year because of injuries. But if he can keep it fresh and keep us going and rack up a few more wins and have a really good end to the season, going into next season, that can only mean good things. So if he is to change it, it would only be for players that he knows are going to be in next season for me, like Rodrigo Gomez, like Pedro Lima. And that's what but I do think he will keep it the same, because in his head, Vítor, you can tell by the way he's speaking, he wants to keep it as it is until we're mathematically safe. Then he might experiment a bit, because he ain't taking it as we are safe. Obviously, all managers are going to say that, aren't they, until it's mathematically. So, yeah, I think it'll be the same team.
Bailiff score prediction?
I think it's going to be a strange one, because it's obviously which Tottenham team turn up. I'm going to go the weird one, like a 2-2.
2-2. Jack?
I mean, they've had a terrible season as well, haven't they? And if you look at the table and think about how bad we've been, and then now you look, we've sort of caught up to that group above us. And it's the likes of West Ham, Man United and Tottenham are just really not that far off us. So, but by their standards and with their fan base and their money, it's been an absolute shocker for them. So I don't think they'll fancy it coming here against a team that's in good form now on paper. So I think we'll get something. I'll go score draw as well, though, 1-1.
1-1. Harry?
3-1 Wolves.
3-1 Wolves. You mentioned obviously West Ham and Man United. They're obviously beating them both at home this season. So go to within, is it 2 points of Spurs with a win? Although the goal difference is much better than ours, obviously, because they're in the positive figures. But Bayliss has your betting odds.
I do indeed. A little bet builder to start you all off. Wolves to win the game. Strand Larsen to have 2 or more shots on target. Andre to be shown a card. 16-1. That's quite a good.
Very nice.
Bet. Wolves quite short, weirdly. I know you wouldn't think that, Wolves Tottenham, but Tottenham haven't been that good. So they're lower odds than you think. 2-1 Wolves. Sarabia any time. 20-1.
Not bad.
Well, I fancy 2-2. Strand Larsen to get the first goal, 61-1.
61-1. It's a weird price.
Yeah, I know. Bizarre. It's online betting, isn't it? Then I've got a 3-2 Wolves. Ryan Ait-Nouri anytime, 80-1, which I quite like. Harry Mansell, 4-1 Wolves. Semedo to score first is...
Oh, my God, millions. What's Semedo?
Is not good.
He never scores.
750.
No, it's actually because Wolves are quite short.
Oh.
Yeah, 398-1.
Do you know what?
400.
Bayliss, this is probably a time to have a mad bet, because I think Spurs will rest players. Because I think we said before we come on, they're playing in Europe, aren't they? For at the time of recording Thursday, so which will be tomorrow, and then next week, so the game after. So they won't even care about this game, Spurs, really. Their whole priority will be on that. So they're going to make changes, and if we're up for it, we could have one of their mad results you just read out. You never know.
They're not. Are they mathematically safe?
They can't, yeah. Well, they're on 37 points, so I think so.
17 points, 21 to play for. Strange things.
Yeah, so no.
I don't think anything that strange has happened, to be honest. Like, I know
No,
something people
that's
say, but I don't think so. Like,
I mean, what was Albion's great escape? I mean, that was
It weren't like that. Yeah, they was at Christmas. They're
like
bottom
that.
of Christmas, weren't they? They were for,
yeah, that's true.
yeah, we're asking a team again
Anytime
that's still
soon.
a team that hasn't won back-to-back games in Ipswich to suddenly go and win 6 out of their last 7. It's just not going to happen. Like,
I think Saturday's killed them. That's it.
I agree. Yeah, they looked dejected.
They had to win that game, and they must be so disappointed in themselves in the fact that they didn't try and kick on. And when we equalised, they just rolled over and just said, "Okay, you can go and win it." And they didn't have a shot on target second half. I don't remember them having a shot second half. So that's disappointing from them lot, but from their point of view. But
even their manager says post match it's done. When your own manager says it, it's done. But like, we can finish. I know we just referred to it. If we have a few wins, we could. We haven't been above 17th all season, have we?
No,
and we could potentially come like 16th, 15th if we have a good run now. That's why I hope we're not on the beach.
I'd be shocked at that, because I've said a few times on this podcast that if we don't finish 17th this season, we're going to get relegated. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong if we get out of that. And so that's testament to how well Vítor's done, really, isn't it? And just how terrible Gary O'Neill was. But
how much better is it to have a good end to a season and a bad start than the other way around? The amount of times?
I didn't used to buy into the thing that suggests that like one season can run into the other. So, but I think I'm wrong about that. I think if we have a good end to this season, we're more likely to start next season well now. Whereas I didn't used to think it really mattered, because we've done the opposite of it, haven't we? Because times when we had a terrible end of last season and we start the season terrible again the next season. So.
Yeah, just molds into one. I mean, what do you think of the quality of the 3 that have come up, Harry? I know we've given it a little bit of airtime over the last couple of weeks, and maybe a little bit through the season as well. But when you look at how close the league is actually, bar Southampton, who've obviously had a torrid time of it and just basically couldn't buy a goal. Do you think the standard has dropped? Do you think the Premier League product just isn't as good as it used to be, or are we just looking back and being nostalgic about sort of 2005?
I just think the people that have been in the Premier League a while have got too much money now. I know there's parachute payments and that, but the gap's huge. And what's weird is, out of the games I've seen Wolves play, out of the games we've played against the bottom 3 so far, I think the team that's played the best against us, well, saying that Ipswich beat us, didn't they, 2-1 at Molineux? But we were shocking. But we beat Southampton 2-0 at home, and they played quite well that day, if you think back.
Yeah,
they kept the ball, and I was thinking, oh my God. So out of the 3, I wouldn't even say Southampton the worst I've seen. I'd say it's Leicester by far. When we beat them 3-0 at their place at the King Power, they were bloody awful. But yeah, Ipswich were worrying me at one point, because in terms of quality, we're miles ahead of them. I've always thought that. I've said since the beginning of the season, in the pre-season podcast, I think we're a mid-table team in terms of quality. But Ipswich had the fight. They just seemed to have a lot of fight, but then it just kind of fell off, didn't it? I think because we kept winning in this run. I know they beat Bournemouth before we beat them, but I think they give up because we just knocked the stuffing out of them confidence-wise, because we kept performing well. And Vítor, I know he's getting a lot of praise, and I'm praising him one of the loudest, but he's just done what we should be doing with this team. Like we say, we'd be 8th, 9th if it had been from the beginning of the season. That's on par from the quality we've got. Look, Andre and Gomez in midfield. With that midfield, you should be a mid-table team.
It's a shame, really, that he's got to sort of start again with so many different positions, because we have got the foundation to kick on. Like, we really have. We're 3 or 4 players with a sensible transfer window. Cunha goes, you got some money there to spend on good young talent. And a nippy quick forward to play off Strand Larsen. You got a decent side. It's such a shame.
Stan, was you planning to talk about that John Percy interview?
I think it was interesting that you made the point, Harry, of Hugo Bueno potentially coming in and taking over sort of Aït-Nouri's berth. Do you think? I'll go over to Jack. Jack, do you think that Aït-Nouri will leave and that Hugo Bueno is the right replacement at the right time, or the right replacement at potentially the wrong time?
Hugo Bueno? No, I don't think
he's coming back. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. No, Jack, I don't know if you've read it, but basically the big bullet points out of John Percy article is that Vítor Pereira wants to integrate Hugo Bueno into the squad next season, because he's been at Feyenoord and he's done really well playing Champions League football with them, 3 assists in 15. He said that Jeff Shee, this is for people who haven't read it, I bet a lot of people have, said Jeff Shee said there is going to be money available, they're not going to go mad. They always say that. Obviously, Cunha's going. Sarabia and Semedo will be leaving. Johnston will be gone because he wants to play first team football. And Vítor Pereira wants a number 10 that can take people on. So that's all the breaking news. I don't know what you think of that, Jack, if you haven't read it.
I hadn't read it. I just, I saw the headline about the fact that Sarabia and Semedo would be leaving and wasn't particularly surprised about that. But yeah, I'm not up to date with the Hugo Bueno thing. But if Aït-Nouri does go, it's going to be a big hole to fill, isn't it? But potentially in a system where we're that dependent on sort of our fullback wing backs, if we're going to replace both of them, that's dangerous. It's a really big hole we have to fill, because I like some of the players we brought in. But you need a bit of experience in your team. And I don't care whether you're Man City or whether you're Ipswich Town or wherever. And Semedo brings that because he's, played so many times now in the Premier League, and he's just always consistently played pretty well. You could argue maybe not when he first came, but last few years he's been one of our most consistent players who's always been there. So it's a dangerous game we're going to have to play, really. Ideally, I'd like to keep both of them. If there's not a contract on the table for Semedo for at least a year, I don't care how much he's on. I think that's the sort of thing you have to consider, and just give him a 1-year extension. But I also totally agree that it's probably the last big money move he'll have of his career. I mean, if he does want to go back to Spain, Portugal, Saudi Arabia,
it'll be
America,
big money though, Jack. There's not a lot left on his contract, is there? It won't be a big money.
I don't mean about money. I mean about wages for him. Yeah. So the last time that he can get a 4-year contract potentially to go and play somewhere.
They're not going to give him. Apparently he's on 80 grand a week, Semedo. They're not going to give him that at his age, Jesse, and that no way. And obviously Sarabia's on 90. But just on Hugo Bueno as well. When you think back to when he first broke into the team under Lopetegui picked Hugo Bueno over Aït-Nouri at left back, if you remember.
Yeah.
Which is mad, really, because he'd just broken the team. And then the reason he went out on loan at the beginning of this season was because obviously he was second fiddle to Aït-Nouri. But I like Hugo Bueno. I'd put him straight in. And if Semedo leaves, obviously we have got Pedro Lima and Rodrigo Gomez. But if Mosquera gets in the starting team, or Giga, you could play Doc right wing back. I know it's a bit of a downgrade on Semedo, but Doc could play there while Pedro Lima and Rodrigo Gomez bed in, or you could start Rodrigo Gomez, because he's done well, hasn't he? Rodrigo Gomez. He started left wing back away at Leicester. He started right wing back against Bristol in the FA Cup in that win. So I think we've got people there to go. And for me, I would have Hugo Bueno starting left wing back if Aït-Nouri leaves, and I'd have Doherty the other side if Semedo leaves, with Rodrigo Gomez and Pedro Lima as cover. But we'll see. And I just hope they do use some of the Cunha money and the Aït-Nouri money if he does go, and bring in another couple of players from the French leagues, maybe like we have with Manetzi and that. Let's just hope they keep their promise, because the amount of times they make up excuses. They did in the summer this year, didn't they? Just gone. Didn't get a centre half in, and then we had to get Agbadou in January because we were struggling. So just do it, Jeff. Don't wait around, and don't put the bloody ticket prices up either.
Well, yeah, he did promise that he wouldn't do it, so we'll expect that to come along.
Can I just add something just quick?
Oh, yeah, go on.
Sorry, can I just add something quickly on we started off then talking about the teams that are going down and sort of the teams that are coming up, and sort of segued onto that. But I think one of the things that particularly the likes of Ipswich and Southampton have been a little bit naive in is they've came up and they've sort of said, right, we're going to just play the way we played that got us promoted from the Championship. And it doesn't work like that in the Premier League. Sometimes in order to come up and do well, you just have to accept that you're not going to try and have the ball all the time, because Southampton were doing that at the start of the season. They're having lots of possession, but just didn't have the firepower to be able to do it. And if they'd played a bit more conservatively and tried to do other stuff on the break, maybe they'd have had more openings. So I think there's a couple of things gone on here. Overall, they have been pathetic, though. It's been really, really bad. If you think back to like when we got relegated under Dave Jones, we got 33 points and we finished bottom. Yeah. That's how much it's sort of changed, in the fact that teams like are going to get in the 20s, and in Southampton's case in the teens if they're lucky. So that's a big shift. And I agree that it's a lot harder for them to come up now and compete with established Premier League teams, but it's also creating this little thing where if you look at the Championship table now, the teams that are at the top. So the likes of Burnley, Sheffield United, Leeds are all teams that have just recently been relegated. So it's also creating a kind of boring championship in the fact that teams with the parachute payments are going to massively outperform the likes of Oxford United and teams like this. Wrexham might be interesting if they come up and see how that goes, but that's a different story altogether, isn't it? So it's creating this weird little bubble in the fact that I think it is not only is it much harder for teams to come up from the championship, it's also a hell of a lot harder for teams coming up from League One or we've been in the championship for a long time to compete with the teams that have just come down.
It's what they want, Jack, though, isn't it? Because it Americanizes the sport if they can do that.
Yeah.
If they can have 17 teams or whatever that are the Premier League, then it rationalizes breaking away. Or it rationalizes 10 of them.
Potentially, but nobody watches American sports. I mean, when you think of the Super Bowl and you compare it to the big games in football, there's no comparison. I mean, the amount of people in the country is obviously a big contributor to it as well. But I think making sports boring and moving them for the sake of it or whatever. But actually, I was never really a fan of the playoffs in the Championship. But I think this is probably the only thing on Jack's point that actually makes it worthwhile for me is that, because you're not actually guaranteed for your top three to go up. It does make it a little bit more of a lottery.
I love the playoffs,
when you finish third, you sometimes don't carry that momentum. You love the playoffs, Harry. Why?
Because it's drama. I actually watch every playoff. I love the playoffs.
Let the last game of the season be drama.
I love drama.
It's my favourite game of football I've ever been to still.
But just on Leicester and Southampton, I think big mistakes they both made as well is they got their managerial change really wrong. Like Van Nistelrooy's done shit at Leicester. They were like well in contention of staying up. Was it Cooper they sacked for Van Nistelrooy and Steve Cooper? And obviously Southampton changed managers as well, and their new bloke's been horrendous. I mean, I know they've been right at the bottom all year, but that's a big thing. Like our manager change worked, didn't it? We got the right man in, luckily. We just got, you say, look, I think it was kind of a desperation appointment, but it's turned out to be brilliant. And in hindsight, I'm really glad we didn't get Graham Potter as well, because I think he's been a bit shit at West Ham. So we fell on the right man. And that's been a huge reason why we've stayed up, along with the quality of squad we've got as well, obviously.
I want to come back to Dan's point on the playoffs. And I know we won it in, 2003.
Best day of my life.
But if you take the emotion of Wolves winning it out of it, are you moving around and making sure that you're free to watch the
whole point of sports
semi-finals? Are you really worried about Oxford versus West Brom in the playoff semi-finals?
Sam, I go and watch football to feel something. Like it is literally all about emotion. Like that is literally.
You got banned for that, didn't you?
That is the point of watching live sport. So that's why it's the best day ever.
What do you think?
But the playoffs are brilliant. It's incredible. Just like to be able to sneak in and finish sixth and then do over the team that's just missed off on automatic by a point. It's glorious. It's what football's all about. It's just rubbing it in someone else's face.
Totally agree.
It's the best thing to happen. So love it. It's entertaining and it's one of probably the best changes I think that they probably made to promotion and relegation, because it also means that it doesn't. Go on.
They should add, they should make, say, they should get 17th place, or one of the bottom three out of the Premier League would have to drop into playoffs, so they got a chance of staying up. So maybe get Ipswich. Imagine that though, I think they do it in. Do they do it in the conference down that level? So if they got Ipswich, Ipswich dropped it. Yeah, that's it. So say if Ipswich now, I know they're miles off, but say if you got on gold, if it's like Blackpool did the year we survived that year under McCarthy, then they drop down into the Championship playoffs. So maybe the only three of them get in the playoffs from the Championship, then the fourth. But then are they going to be too strong and just blitz the playoffs every year? So the one that does get relegated always win the playoffs. But I think that'd be interesting as well.
Now, the reason I bring this up is I wanted to see if any of you had heard about the Belgian Pro League, but does anybody know how it works?
No.
Is it the one that splits in half?
Right. Point? So unlike most major European leagues, it features a unique format. A regular season followed by a championship playoff and a relegation playoff where teams' points are halved and the top 6 teams compete for the title. So there's a regular season. So the 16 teams play each other twice, home and away, for a total of 30 matches. Points are awarded for wins, 3 points, draws, 1 point, same for us. If teams are tied, the tiebreaker is total wins, then goal difference. Then they go into a championship playoff. So the top 6 teams from the regular season enter the championship playoff. The teams start the playoff with half of their regular season points, rounded up to the nearest integer. The team with the most points after the playoff is crowned the champion. The bottom 4 teams from the regular season enter the relegation playoff. The bottom 2 teams are relegated, while the 14th place team plays a promotion relegation playoff against 3rd place finisher of the Challenger Pro League.
And then they catch the snitch, and
then you got to catch the snitch. So what can happen is that you have a league of teams, but all of the points are different. So you could have someone below you in the table with more points, because your points get halved after that first phase of the season. Is that too complicated, Harry, or would you love to see that?
I think I'd have to do an exam on that, because I couldn't repeat what you've just said, but it sounded fun.
So no, I get it. I know it's sad, but I have in the past scrolled through random football leagues tables and thought that where the team, say in 7th, has 50 points and the team above them has 46 or something, and thought it was strange. But that's
The only advantage to it is that it keeps it interesting for everybody. Whereas there are at least 10 teams in the Premier League every year, where by now, don't matter.
Have you seen the narrative lately that they're saying it's the most boring Premier League ever? But obviously we've been nail-biting and been on the edge of it a bit. But for neutral fans, they're saying it's the worst Premier League ever. There's still a fight for the top 4. I don't know if you watched the Manchester derby the weekend.
That's
Gary
what kicked
Neville,
it off, wasn't it, the Manchester derby?
Yeah, he was apologising for his commentary, his co-coms. He said it was so boring. I turned it off at half-time. But yeah, if it does end on a bit of a whimper of the league, it is a bit crap, isn't it? It is better if everything goes down to the wire. But it is what it is, isn't it?
It has. I agree. I think it is. I think it is. It's just so boring. The only really interesting thing is the likes of sort of Forest getting into Champions League. But the fact that there's 5 teams get it takes the edge off that a little bit, because it's just kind of like it gives them even more chance then. It's not even going to be that as nail biting. So yeah, I agree. It's boring, particularly the relegation battle. Like everyone remember, like our relegation derby last day with Blackburn. Like how great was that for TV? And this is just like it's going to be. Oh, there's 6 games left and 3 teams are relegated.
That's it. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, it doesn't come down to the wire as much, but I don't know how you sort it out really, because the money in the Premier League is obviously so massive, and the longer you stay in there, the more money you get. You'll get teams like us who have a bad couple of seasons, but actually manage to unearth some gems in the Cunhas and João Gomez's of the world. So yeah, we will wait and see how that goes. Would anybody like to add anything onto that?
I just love the fact that it's the most boring league and Liverpool are going to win it. And again, no one's going to remember it like when they won it in COVID. So works out all right.
2 for 2. 2 for 2 in the Premier League era. Perfect. Right. Okay. Well, if you're making your way to the Spurs game on Sunday, have a good time. Drink responsibly. Work the next day. It will say goodbye to Harry Mansell.
First the points, then the pints, as Vítor would say. 0% Heinekens all round. See you in a bit.
It's a goodbye from Dan Bayliss.
I can't follow that. Goodbye.
And Jack Williams.
Bye, everybody.
And it is a goodbye from me. Goodbye.